My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister-in-law, and she gave birth to his baby. The betrayal was just the beginning of how my golden child brother and my entire family would once again prove that I was never truly part of them. Now, 2 months after our divorce and my recent promotion, they're desperately trying to get back into my life for money, obviously. I hesitated to share these personal details on this platform. It's deeply personal, and reliving it isn't easy. But I felt it might help someone who's stuck in a similar mess, feeling powerless and lost. Sometimes, hearing someone else's story can give you the clarity and direction you need to regain control of your life. Let me tell you my story, and you decide if I'm wrong for feeling a twisted sense of justice after everything they put me through. Growing up, my brother David was the Golden Boy varsity captain, class president, mom and dad's pride and joy. Meanwhile, I was the difficult daughter who preferred coding to cheerleading. The disparity was crystal clear on the day I got my acceptance letter to MIT's computer science program. I thought that it was a little weird to start the party without me, but then I saw the cake and completely lost it. It was congratulating David on his community college acceptance instead. When I confronted my parents, they said they didn't want David to feel left out, so they threw him a party instead, and that instead of throwing a tantrum, I should be trying to uplift my brother. That just completely broke me. That very night, I made up my mind to never come back. I took out student loans, worked through college, and built my life from scratch. They never reached out, and honestly, I was better off for it. I threw myself into tech, determined to prove them wrong about the difficult daughter who'd never amount to anything. When I met James in my senior year of college, he seemed different from my family. He actually listened when I talked about my startup dreams, encouraged me when I doubted myself. He made me feel seen for the first time in my life. We got married 2 years after graduation, and I thought I'd finally found someone who chose me first. 3 years ago, David reached out online. Said our parents really missed me, that they wanted to make amends. A lot had happened. I was leading a comfortable life, my startup was showing promise. But that old wound from my parents had never really healed. Still, when David kept insisting, I agreed to meet them. It was awkward at first, but they seemed to be making an effort to fix things. So I made what turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. I invited them to my home for dinner. That's how Lisa, David's wife, met James. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. The late-night texts James claimed were work emergencies. Lisa suddenly showing up at our house when I had investor meetings. But I was so focused on my startup's critical phase, trying to balance everything. I tried my best to be a good wife despite the long hours. I counted, only 5 critical meetings that took me away for a couple of days. 5. I'd call him every night, tell him how this could change our lives forever, how his support meant everything. He'd sound distant, but I thought he was just missing me. Then came that Christmas dinner that changed everything. I remember every detail of that Christmas dinner. Lisa had been oddly insistent about hosting it at their new house, which they'd bought using David's recent bonus. Another thing my parents wouldn't stop gushing about. I'd been nauseous all day, but figured it was just anxiety about spending another holiday watching my parents fawn over David. The evening started like always. Mom praising David's latest achievements, Dad nodding along proudly. James kept checking his phone under the table, which wasn't unusual lately. But then Lisa made her announcement. "We're having a baby," she beamed, one hand on her stomach. The room erupted in celebration. My parents were ecstatic about becoming grandparents. But something felt off. James's face had gone pale, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. "How far along are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. 4 months, Lisa replied, still beaming. 4 months. The exact time I'd been away for that critical investor meeting in San Francisco. The one where James said he was too busy with work to join me. I excused myself to get water from the kitchen. That's when I saw it. James's phone lighting up on the counter. He must have left it there when he helped bring in dessert. The text preview from Lisa was clear as day. "They're all so happy about the baby. I can't wait to tell them it's actually yours." Everything went silent. The room started spinning. All those late-night texts, the sudden visits, the weird tension whenever we all met. It wasn't just an affair. They'd been planning this, waiting for the right moment to destroy everything. I walked back to the dining room, phone in hand. "James," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I think you got a text." The color drained from both their faces. Lisa started to say something, but I cut her off by reading the message out loud. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother, in her infinite wisdom, spoke up. "Well, dear, maybe if you hadn't been so focused on your little computer project, James wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for attention." That's when I realized they weren't just going to blame me for this. They were going to use it to prove what they'd always believed, that I was the problem, the difficult daughter who couldn't even keep her husband happy. But what happened next would show me just how deep their betrayal really went. I left the dinner without another word, James calling after me. But what I discovered in the following days made the Christmas revelation seem almost gentle in comparison. While I was trying to process my husband's betrayal, Lisa was busy spinning her story to everyone who would listen. She painted herself as the victim who fell in love while consoling James through his struggles with my workaholism. My brother, who I'd tried so hard to reconnect with, backed her every word. Turns out he'd known about their affair for months. He didn't just approve. He'd helped cover for them. "Lisa makes him happy," David told me when I confronted him. "And let's be honest, you were never really there. Always at your startup, always with your investors. James needed someone who could actually be a wife." But it got worse. Through our mutual friends, I learned the full extent of their deception. Lisa hadn't just stumbled into an affair with my husband. She'd orchestrated everything from the moment we reconnected with my family. Her college friend worked in venture capital and had seen my startup's pitch deck. She knew we were on the verge of something big. The plan was simple. Wait until the baby was born, then demand a divorce. James would leave me for her, and with my family backing their story about my neglect and emotional abandonment, they'd be set up for a hefty settlement just as my company was about to take off. I tried explaining to my parents how I'd balanced everything, how I'd only been away 5 times, how I'd called every night, how I'd tried to include James in my dreams. But Mom just shook her head. "Sweetheart," she said in that condescending tone I'd grown up with, "Lisa's going to give us a grandchild, and she's done such a wonderful job supporting David through his gambling problem. Maybe this is for the best." That's when I realized Lisa had been paying off David's gambling debts with her salary. She had financial control over my golden child brother, and now she wanted control over my future success too. I filed for divorce the next day, but I wasn't prepared for how ugly things would get when Lisa realized I wasn't going to wait around for their plan to unfold. The divorce battle showed me exactly how far my family would go to destroy me. Lisa and James didn't just want to end my marriage, they wanted to break me completely. My parents testified on their behalf. Can you imagine? My own parents stood in court and detailed every childhood tantrum, every difficult phase, painting a picture of an unstable, controlling woman. Mom even brought up the MIT acceptance party incident as an example of my jealous, attention-seeking behavior. According to them, I forced James to quit his job. He never had one, controlled all our finances, I was the only one earning, and isolated him from friends. He was sleeping with my sister-in-law. "Your Honor," Lisa's lawyer said, "Mrs. James exhibited classic controlling behavior. She forced her husband to stay home while she chased her startup dreams, using money to keep him dependent on her. The affair, while regrettable, was a cry for emotional support." I sat there, stunned, as they twisted every sacrifice I'd made into something sinister. Those 5 business trips? According to them, I'd abandoned James for weeks at a time. The late nights coding? Evidence of my neglect. The fact that I paid all our bills? Financial abuse? James played his part perfectly. The wounded husband who just wanted to be loved. He even cried on the stand, talking about how lonely he felt while I chased money and success. No one mentioned how he'd been planning to take that same money. But Lisa's performance was the real masterpiece. 7 months pregnant, glowing, one hand always on her belly, the perfect picture of maternal innocence. She tearfully recounted how she'd only been trying to help James cope with my emotional unavailability. The settlement was brutal. The judge, swayed by their performance and my family's testimony, awarded James a significant portion of my assets. I had to pay him alimony, despite the fact that he was already living with Lisa in their new house, the down payment for which came from my settlement money. I was angry, devastated, but most of all, exhausted. I just wanted it over. So I signed the papers, paid what they demanded, and focused on the one thing they couldn't take from me: my company. For 6 months, I threw myself into work. No family, no relationships, just endless code and investor meetings. My startup was the only thing that made sense anymore. And then, just when they thought they'd broken me completely, everything changed. The thing about rock bottom is that it gives you clarity. After the divorce, I had nothing left to lose, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I worked. Not for revenge, not even for success, really. I just needed something to keep me sane. My startup was developing AI solutions for supply chain management. Not the sexiest tech, but something I understood deeply from my years watching my dad's business struggles. Investors had been interested, but cautious. Then, during one of those sleepless nights coding, I finally cracked the algorithm issue we'd been stuck on for months. Things moved quickly after that. Within 6 months, we landed 3 major clients. 9 months in, we were featured in TechCrunch. The same week, I got promoted to CTO as we merged with a larger tech firm, bringing both a better salary and equity. I didn't post about any of it online. I'd learned my lesson about sharing success with people who want to see you fail. But news travels, especially in a family that's watching your every move. It started with casual texts from mom, just thinking of you messages that I ignored. Then David's wife started viewing my LinkedIn profile. Finally, last Tuesday, I got an email from James, the first contact since the divorce. Subject line: "We need to talk." I deleted it without reading, but the next morning my mother showed up at my office. "Ma'am, you can't just..." Our receptionist started. "I'm her mother." Mom was causing a scene in our newly renovated lobby, mascara already running. "She has to talk to me. She has to help us." I was in the middle of a client call when security called up. Part of me wanted to let them escort her out, but I knew she'd just keep coming back. So I went down. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice low. The lobby was full of employees pretending not to watch. She grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. "Please, just come to dinner. Your brother, we need your help. The baby." That's how I found myself driving to their house 2 days later, about to discover exactly how badly my perfect brother and his scheming wife had screwed up their lives. Here's the full success and confrontation section. The thing about rock bottom is that it gives you clarity. After the divorce, I had nothing left to lose, so I did the only thing I knew how to do. I worked. Not for revenge, not even for success, really. I just needed something to keep me sane. My startup was developing AI solutions for supply chain management. Not the sexiest tech, but something I understood deeply from my years watching my dad's business struggles. Investors had been interested, but cautious. Then, during one of those sleepless nights coding, I finally cracked the algorithm issue we'd been stuck on for months. Things moved quickly after that. Within 6 months, we landed 3 major clients. 9 months in, we were featured in TechCrunch. The same week, I got promoted to CTO as we merged with a larger tech firm, bringing both a better salary and equity. I didn't post about any of it online. I'd learned my lesson about sharing success with people who want to see you fail. But news travels, especially in a family that's watching your every move. It started with casual texts from mom, just thinking of you messages that I ignored. Then David's wife started viewing my LinkedIn profile. Finally, last Tuesday, I got an email from James, the first contact since the divorce. Subject line: "We need to talk." I deleted it without reading, but the next morning my mother showed up at my office. "Ma'am, you can't just..." Our receptionist started. "I'm her mother." Mom was causing a scene in our newly renovated lobby, mascara already running. "She has to talk to me. She has to help us." I was in the middle of a client call when security called up. Part of me wanted to let them escort her out, but I knew she'd just keep coming back. So I went down. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice low. The lobby was full of employees pretending not to watch. She grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. "Please, just come to dinner. Your brother, we need your help. The baby." That's how I found myself driving to their house 2 days later, about to discover exactly how badly my perfect brother and his scheming wife had screwed up their lives. I pulled up to their house, a modest 2-story that had definitely seen better days. The perfect metaphor for my brother's life, I thought. The settlement money clearly hadn't lasted long. David opened the door before I could knock. Gone was the cocky smile I remembered. He looked desperate. Their living room was cluttered with baby things, laundry piled on every surface. The house smelled like old takeout and unwashed dishes. "She's upstairs with the baby," he said quietly. My parents sat on their worn couch, Mom still in her work clothes despite being retired for years. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. "We've hit a rough patch," Mom started, her voice trembling. "David lost his job 3 months ago. The gambling, it got worse." "The severance is gone," David cut in. "Lisa's savings too. We can't make the mortgage payments, and with the baby..." I sat there, taking in the scene. The golden child who could do no wrong. The manipulative sister-in-law who'd orchestrated my marriage's destruction. My enabling parents, all sitting in a house they could no longer afford, looking at me like I was their salvation. "Where's James?" I asked, noticing his car wasn't outside. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know, but Lisa's voice from the stairs filled in the details anyway. "He left," she said, bouncing a fussy baby. "Found someone else at his gym. Someone without all our complications." I almost laughed. The man they'd destroyed my marriage for, the one they'd claimed was just looking for real love, he'd already moved on to his next target. The poetic justice would have been perfect if it wasn't so tragic. But what they said next would make me realize this was just the beginning of their desperation. "We just need a small loan," David said, as if asking to borrow lunch money. "Just until I find another job. 3 months tops." I looked around the room again. Really looked this time. Designer baby clothes poking out of the laundry pile. A half-empty bottle of expensive whiskey on the counter. The giant TV mounted on the wall. They hadn't just blown through the settlement money. They'd lived like nothing could touch them. "How much?" I asked, already knowing it would be ridiculous. Mom jumped in before David could answer. "The mortgage is behind by 4 months, and there's the car payments, and David's gambling debt to some people who aren't being very patient." 200,000, Lisa blurted out. "Give or take." The baby started crying then. Perfect timing, I thought. Lisa bounced him, trying to soothe him, and I saw her wedding ring, the one James had given me that I'd left on our dining table the night I moved out. "No," I said quietly. "What?" David's head snapped up. I said no. I stood up. "You don't get to destroy my marriage, lie in court to take my money, and then ask for more when you burn through it." "We're family," Mom was crying again. "That baby is your nephew." "Family?" I laughed. "Was I family when you sided with them in the divorce? When you told the judge I was unstable and controlling? When you watched Lisa and James plan to trap me with a baby that wasn't mine?" "That was different," David started, but I cut him off. "You're right. It was different. Back then, you all thought you had won. You had the settlement money, the perfect little family, and I was the loser who'd end up alone. Funny how things change." Lisa stepped forward, still bouncing the baby. "I know we hurt you, but please, if not for us, then for him. He's innocent in all this." That's when I lost it. "You want to talk about innocent?" My voice was shaking now. "I was innocent when you decided to seduce my husband. I was innocent when my own family helped you destroy my life. And now you want me to care about innocence?" I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. David blocked my path. "You can't just leave us like this," he growled. "You have the money, you're just being spiteful." "Move," I said calmly. "Or what? You'll call security like you did with Mom? Play the victim again?" I looked my golden child brother in the eyes. "No, David, I'll call the police. And then I'll call those impatient people you owe money to and tell them exactly where to find you." He paled and stepped aside. As I opened the door, I heard Lisa's last desperate attempt. "Please," she called out, "we'll lose everything." I turned back one last time. "You already lost everything. You just didn't know it until the money ran out." But their desperation wouldn't end there. What they did next would force me to take measures I never thought I'd have to consider. The harassment started the next day. Constant calls from different numbers, emails, messages on every social platform. Mom camping outside my office building until security had to remove her. David showing up at my favorite coffee shop, trying to corner me. But it was Lisa who took it to the next level. She emailed my entire board of directors, spinning a sob story about how her baby's aunt, a C-level executive, was refusing to help her struggling family. Some board members were concerned about the family values optics. I had to spend an entire emergency meeting explaining my family's history of manipulation and financial exploitation. Then came the threat. "If you don't help us," David texted late one night, "Lisa will tell everyone how you drove James away with your obsession with work, how you neglected your marriage for money, how you're letting your own nephews suffer because of spite. Think your investors will want a heartless person as their CTO?" I forwarded everything to my lawyer. "They're desperate," he said, "but they're also dangerous. Desperate people do desperate things." He was right. The next morning, I found my car vandalized in the office parking lot. "Help your family" scratched into the paint. Security footage showed David, drunk, doing it at 3 a.m. That's when I decided enough was enough. I had my lawyer draft a cease and desist letter. Then I did something I should have done during the divorce. I gathered evidence. All their texts, emails, security footage, the original messages between James and Lisa planning their affair, documentation of David's gambling debts. Everything. "You want to play?" I texted David. "Let's play. I'm sure your creditors would love to know about that secret account where you're hiding money, and Mom and Dad's retirement fund you borrowed from." The threat stopped immediately, but then something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. 3 days after I sent that text, I got an email from Lisa. Not a demand or threat this time, just a medical bill attached. Mom had collapsed from the stress, heart problems they couldn't afford to treat. I sat there staring at my screen for a long time. I thought about that little girl who just wanted her parents to be proud of her MIT acceptance. About how that same girl had turned into someone who'd let her mother go untreated just to prove a point. Was I becoming what they'd always claimed I was? Cold, heartless, caring only about money? I called my lawyer first. Had him set up a medical trust for Mom, paid directly to the hospital, not to my family. Then a separate educational trust for the baby. Not because they deserved it, but because I needed to be able to look in the mirror every morning. "The medical trust is non-negotiable," I wrote in my email to them. "Mom gets treatment, but the money goes straight to the hospital. The baby gets a future, but through a trust he can only access for education. That's it. No loans, no cash, no second chances. And after this, we're done. Completely." Lisa tried to respond, probably to negotiate, but I'd already blocked them all. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making others suffer. It's refusing to let them turn you into someone you're not. They may have taken my marriage and my trust, but they don't get to take my humanity too. It's been 2 months since then. Mom's doing better, according to the hospital reports. I heard David finally got a job, probably realizing no more bailouts were coming. The baby will have a chance at college, far more than I ever got from my family. As for me, my company's expanding to 3 new countries next month. I'm dating someone who actually supports my ambitions. And most importantly, I sleep well at night, knowing I didn't let their darkness dim my light. Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who brings out the best in you. And sometimes letting go is the kindest thing you can do, both for them and for yourself. The medical trust was the right call. Turns out Mom needed bypass surgery, which is now scheduled for next month. I still don't talk to them, but the hospital keeps me informed as the trust administrator. My lawyer handles any necessary communication. David hasn't tried to contact me since the trusts were set up. I heard through a mutual friend that he's been sober for a month and actually showing up to his new job. Lisa's gone surprisingly quiet too. Maybe reality finally sank in that their manipulation tactics won't work anymore. The baby's trust is structured so that neither David nor Lisa can touch it. It'll be there for his education, whether that's college, trade school, or whatever he chooses. I might never have a relationship with my nephew, but at least he'll have options I never had. My company's doing better than ever. The new relationship is going well. He actually read my entire pitch deck the other night and had genuine questions about the technology. It's amazing how different it feels when someone actually supports your dreams instead of resenting them. But here's what I keep wondering, and I'd really appreciate your thoughts. Did I do the right thing? Setting up those trusts instead of cutting them off completely? Some friends say I'm still letting them manipulate me, that I shouldn't have given them anything after what they did. Others say it shows I'm better than them. Was I too harsh before? Not harsh enough? Should I have handled it differently? I know I can't change the past, but your perspectives might help others who find themselves in similar situations. What would you have done? Do comment below and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.